Hello everyone, my name is Vander and welcome to Vander Explains, a place where we break down the most fascinating cases, breakthroughs, and discoveries. And today, I am extremely excited because we're diving into what I believe is one of the greatest scientific breakthroughs of our generation. Yes, you read the title right. Colossal has actually done it. This is not a drill, and we are witnessing the return of the dire wolves. If you've been following the channel, you'll remember our last deep dive into Colossal, where we explored what the company stands for, what their mission is, and exactly which species they plan to bring back from extinction. If you haven't seen that one yet, I highly recommend checking it out first and then circling back here. It gives this story so much more context. So, without further ado, strap in, let's get started. In our previous video about Colossal, we explored the concept of de-extinction and discussed how they plan on bringing back long-lost species from extinction. That video was about 2 years ago now, and oh boy have they developed a lot of things in between that time. The team at Colossal are still committed to bring back the woolly mammoth, the thylacine or Tasmanian tiger, and the dodo bird. However, while these projects are headlining, there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes that pushes the science that much closer to fruition. Just to highlight a few examples, Colossal has partnered up with various conservation projects around the world. And they are actively allowing these organizations to utilize Colossal's research and resources to help critically endangered species that are on the brink of extinction. However, the groundbreaking news that some of you might already be aware of is their successful de-extinction of the dire wolf, or so they claim. We will discuss the nuances and rebuttals that some experts have claimed later in this video. So, what is the dire wolf? Well, the dire wolf is an extinct canid species that were last seen on Earth more than 10,000 years ago. Now, some people might think that they are a mythological animal since they've been vastly portrayed in games or TV shows like Game of Thrones. But they are in fact a real prehistoric canine that lived in the Americas during the late Pleistocene period. The team at Colossal has successfully made 3 direwolves, 2 males Remus and Romulus, and a female Khaleesi. Remus and Romulus were born on October 2024, so they are roughly about 6 months old now, and Khaleesi, born on January 2025, about 3 months old. Remus and Romulus, who are just entering through their adolescence, reportedly weighs in at 80 pounds and measures 5.5 feet long. They are already about the size of an adult grey wolf, and they still have about 12 months of growth to go through. So they are tracking to grow into the size and stature of a dire wolf. They are being kept at an unnamed secure facility in the US, known only to their conservation partners and teams. And Colossal had to go through extreme lengths to mask any indicators of their location in their media footage, for obvious safety reasons. Now you might be wondering why the team sort of diverted their attention from their original 3 keystone species to the dire wolves. I thought of the same myself. However, the Colossal team, including Beth Shapiro and co-founders George Church and Ben Lamb, made this pivot during one of their many visits with one of their conservation partners, MHA Nation. MHA Nation is one of the largest indigenous groups in the US, based in North Dakota. During their visit, they met with MHA chairman Mark Fox. Colossal was sharing their ideas and technologies with Chairman Fox, and when asked about what projects they think Colossal could help with, Chairman Fox said that the bison, wolves, eagles, and fish are cornerstone species and that they are crucial to the land. So if they were to focus on specific projects, the team should tackle those species first. As they were walking through the Cultural Heritage Museum, Chairman Fox stopped in front of a picture of the great white wolf. Lost knowledge and stories have been passed down for generations about the white wolf, and some even speculated that it might have been a dire wolf. Hearing that story, Ben Lamb felt the connection instantly. He wanted to see if this was even a viable thing for his team to take on. Months later, and after consulting with various experts, the team decided to tackle the de-extinction of the dire wolf. After going through Colossal's web pages and watching their videos explaining how they brought back the direwolves from extinction, I am going to try my best to break down and summarize exactly how the team achieved this revolutionary feat of science. If you want to check out the articles and videos yourself, please see this video's description. The first step is to find ancient direwolf DNA that is viable for sequencing and analysis. This is much easier said than done, because when an organism dies, their DNA degrades at a relatively rapid rate. The half-life of DNA is estimated to be around 520 years, so in 1,000 years, approximately 75% of the DNA is lost. That could be further accelerated if the environment where the remains were found have high temperatures, humidity, acidity, and radiation. Given that dire wolves died off more than 10,000 years ago, and that most of their remains are found in the La Brea tar pit, getting viable DNA there is pretty much impossible. Not only does the heat degrade the DNA, but acidification of the remains pretty much renders the samples unusable. But, as the team collaborated with other scientists and researchers, they found that there are two specimens that contain viable DNA. One was a single 13,000-year-old tooth that contained partial DNA and had roughly 15% of the genome. This in itself wasn't enough to map a full DNA sequence, so the team needed to find the other specimen, which was a skull. The 72,000-year-old skull was located in a museum, and with their permission, the team were able to examine and carefully take out the petrous bone from the skull. The petrous bone is a very dense bone found in the inner ear. This bone doesn't change much as an organism ages, which means that it is very rich in DNA. Sequencing both the petrous bone and the tooth, the team luckily got more than enough DNA in them to sequence whole genomes. Once they have sequenced the direwolf genome, it is now time to find the closest living relative of that species. For this purpose, the team determined that gray wolves were the closest. Now I know that some research papers have had opposing views stating that dire wolves are closer to jackals than gray wolves. However, the team was confident enough to determine that gray wolves share roughly 99.5% DNA with dire wolves. To scrutinize the process further, the team had to find a gray wolf that has had the least DNA mixture from crossbreeding with other species like jackals and coyotes. They then determined this to be the gray wolf named Jackson, and they took a blood sample. This process is also one that Colossal is pioneering, as prior to this, taking a sample usually means taking a tissue or skin sample. Within the blood, the team isolated the endothelial progenitor cell and made a DNA genome out of it. Once they have both direwolf and gray wolf genome sequences, Colossal used an AI-driven software from a spin-off company Form Bio to analyze the differences. Using AI meant that computation was done in a more rapid rate with less mistakes. The team needed to find out what genes made a direwolf a direwolf. The result of the analysis showed about 20 different genomic markers. Then using the multiplex genomic editing tool CRISPR, the scientists went into the gray wolf cells and made the 20 edits across 14 different genes simultaneously. These edits focused on core genes that drive specific phenotypes or physical attributes. Things like size, stockier build, longer legs, and narrower skulls. Once the gray wolf cell has been edited and cloned in the cell, the scientists will need to find a suitable surrogate mother. The team determined that this would be a role suitable for a domestic dog. Using a method called somatic cell nuclear transfer, or SCNT for short, the scientists were able to extract the nucleus from the somatic cell and insert it into an enucleated ovum, which is then started to develop as an embryo. The embryo is then implanted into the surrogate dog and the gestation process begins. Once the surrogate mother has given birth, the resulting animal will be one that carries all the genetic identity of the donor nucleus. So there you have it, a step-by-step process of how Colossal made a dire wolf. Now for the elephant in the room, or should we say the wolf in the room. The question that has everyone divided and debating online. Is this actually a dire wolf? Would you personally consider this to be a dire wolf? Or is it more of a genetically modified gray wolf mimicking dire wolf traits? Well, let's quickly review the facts. Ancient direwolf DNA was not inserted into the gray wolf cells used to make Remus, Romulus, and Khaleesi. They were only used as a reference genome to design and edit the gray wolf cells. The result is a cell that exactly matches the ancient genome, but it wasn't built from it. So here is where the technicality and philosophical twist comes in. If you recreate an ancient animal's DNA from scratch using modern parts, is it the same thing? Some scientists says yes. It's genetically identical and functionally the same, so it is a dire wolf. Others say no, it's just a modern mimic made to look and act like a dire wolf. Well, what do you think? Please leave a comment down below and let's all share our thoughts. Now the next question is, why did Colossal decide to do this in the first place? Why go through all this effort to bring back a species that has been extinct for over 10,000 years? Well, according to Colossal, it all starts with a proof of concept. Bringing back the dire wolf wasn't just for show. It was to prove to the world that this kind of de-extinction science isn't science fiction anymore. It's real and it's possible right now. But more importantly, they wanted to demonstrate that the technology behind de-extinction, CRISPR editing, AI-driven genome mapping, and cellular cloning can also be used to help critically endangered species. Take the red wolf for example, a species on the absolute brink with only about 15 left in the wild. Colossal didn't just tinker with dire wolves for fun. In the process, they also cloned 4 red wolves, one of whom is named Hope. And yes, that name is no coincidence. These wolves aren't extinct yet, but they've been so close for so long. And now, thanks to this technology, they might actually have a shot. Then there's the bigger ecological mission. You might have heard of what happened when wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park in the late 90s. Just 14 wolves were released, and the impact? Absolutely massive. The elk population, which had exploded, finally started moving again. Sick and old animals were getting taken out of the herd, and diseases spread less. Vegetation, especially willows, started growing back. This brought back beavers, which rely on willows for food. Beavers returned, reshaped the rivers, restored the wetlands, and changing the literal shape of the land. That's what proper rewilding can do. It's not just about the animal, it's about fixing broken ecosystems. Yellowstone has had a wolf-shaped hole in their ecosystem for so long, and only in the late 90s were they restored. And Colossal believes that extinct species like the dire wolf were key players in the ancient ecosystems. Now before you get too excited, there are currently no plans to release Remus, Romulus, or Khaleesi. They are not being unleashed into the wild anytime soon, but the point is they could, and that is huge. Colossal also isn't just doing this for the headlines. They're heavily invested in conservation and preservation. Every de-extinction project they run is paired with a modern endangered counterpart. Dire wolves paired with the red wolf, woolly mammoths paired with Asian elephants, Tasmanian tigers paired with the fat-tailed dunnart, and the dodo bird paired with the Nicobar pigeon. It's not all about the past, it's also about the future. And Colossal's future is one that is really ambitious. they're trying to work towards creating some sort of Noah's Ark genome bank, a secure DNA vault for every species on Earth starting in the United States. We already have seed banks to preserve crops and plants, and Colossal believes we should have the same for animals. Because if we don't act now, we might lose them before we even realize they're in danger. So the next time someone rolls their eyes at the idea of resurrecting prehistoric animals, you can tell them it is not about just bringing back what we've lost, it's about protecting what we still have. Now, the reception of this news has mostly been positive. However, not everyone was convinced at what Colossal has done, which left people divided. So let's break this down. On one side, there are scientists, conservationists, and tech optimists who believe that this is the future. They see Colossal's work as a proof of concept, and that's already making waves. They've successfully cloned and raised red wolves, they've developed synthetic biology tools, and maybe most importantly, they sparked the public imagination about conservation in a world where traditional methods are failing. To them, this isn't just a lab experiment. This is hope, a new world, the start of a genetic toolkit for repairing Earth's biodiversity. But on the other side, the realists and the critics aren't convinced, and they are not so shy about it. Major outlets like The Guardian, Nature, and Scientific American publish critical takes calling out Colossal for what they see as scientific theater. Their main point? Well, that this isn't a dire wolf. It's just a grey wolf with tweaked genes to look like a dire wolf. So critics say calling this creature a dire wolf is at best misleading, and at worst, a marketing scheme over science. Then there's the deeper philosophical debate. Even if Colossal could bring back extinct animal exactly as it once was, should they do it? This is where ecologists bring the concept of ecosystem homeostasis. See, when a species goes extinct, it doesn't leave behind a perfectly shaped whole. Ecosystems are like living organisms. They adapt. They fill in the gaps over long periods of time. Let's take a quick peek at Madagascar, for example. There's a theory that lemurs, especially the strange little eye, evolved to take over ecological roles that no longer existed. In this case, the eye developed a long, thin tapping finger, essentially becoming a woodpecker substitute in a place where woodpeckers had long died off. So if you suddenly reintroduce a large predator or herbivore that used to serve that role that is now already filled, you might be disrupting and not restoring the balance. Some ecologists call this the Jenga effect in reverse. If you try to jam the old block back in, you might knock everything down. And then there's the public. Across social medias, forums, Reddit threads, and YouTube comment sections, you'll find every take imaginable. That this is the most exciting thing they've seen in years, that they're playing God, or even that this is Jurassic Park waiting to happen. Some people love the idea of de-extinction, but worry about animal welfare, ethics, and even environmental risks. And still, many more are just watching and unsure of what's to come. Well, we do have an inkling as what is next. If resurrecting the dire wolf wasn't enough for you, Colossal has even bigger plans. Literally. The woolly mammoth and the thylacine. All by the end of the decade. Colossal's most ambitious and most publicized project is to bring back the woolly mammoth by 2028. But before they jump into elephant embryos, they had to do something a little unexpected. They started with mice. To crack the code of the mammoth's iconic woolly coat, Colossal needed to figure out exactly what genes causes the dense insulating hair. Here's where things get clever. They didn't just force mammoth DNA into a mouse, because there's over a 200 million year evolutionary gap in between them. That could be painful, dangerous, unethical, and scientifically sketchy. Instead, they looked at homologous genes, genetic blueprints shared across all mammals, and pinpointed which ones influence hair density, growth, and texture. Using their multiplex gene editing tools, they edited multiple genes and ran a monoclonal screening, a final test to scan for unintended mutations. Think of it like proofreading a genome line by line. And then voila, they created woolly mice. Tiny rodents with a cold weather makeover, built entirely through ethical gene editing. Oh, and they're not just playing fast and loose with animals either. Colossal is officially certified by the American Humane Society. They are the company that is responsible for saying no animals were harmed in the making of this video. In conjunction to that research, Colossal also developed induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs. These are cells that can be turned into any tissue desired. In this case, they use them to grow woolly mammoth hair in a lab dish. Imagine a clump of hair growing out of a patch of skin on a dish. But what about the thylacine? Well, both Colossal and Australia wants it back. Their goal is to bring it back within the next 8 years. The technology they've used for wolves and woolly hair will lay the groundwork. And they are already researching their closest living relative, the fat-tailed Dunnart. If you want to be kept in the loop of Colossal's updates, I suggest you head over to their website and subscribe to their newsletter. Well, there you have it. An update on Colossal Biosciences and the groundbreaking process bringing back the dire wolf from extinction. From gene editing mice to mimic mammoths, to resurrecting ancient apex predators, we are witnessing the edge of science fiction becoming science fact. And whether you see this as playing God, repairing what we broke, or simply science, there's one thing that's clear. Colossal isn't done yet, and neither is their story. Thanks again for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more videos just like this. Be sure to check out other episodes by clicking here, and maybe, just maybe, we'll explore another incredible story in the next video. If you have a theory, question, or just want to share your thoughts, drop a comment down below. And hey, recommend me a case you want me to review and explain. For now, this is Vander, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one.